I started teaching a few months ago at a big, old school. I was nervous but excited. I thought I could inspire my students to love biology. The place looked worn down. The paint flaked off the walls, and the hallways were dim and lifeless. But I set up my classroom and arranged the desks just how I wanted them. Then I found a note in my desk. It said, "They're watching you." I laughed at first, thinking it must be a prank. But a chill ran down my back. I wondered if my new job would be fun after all. As time went on, weird things started happening. While I was teaching, the lights above flickered. It felt deliberate, like something wanted my attention. I sometimes caught movement from the corner of my eye, but when I looked, nothing was there. Shadows felt wrong, like they had a mind of their own. My heart raced. Some of my students were absent during tests too, and I became uneasy. Did I really hear footsteps, or was I imagining it all? Then one morning I won't forget it. A girl named Clara collapsed in the middle of my class. Panic shot through the room. She kept mumbling about seeing things on the walls. The other kids stared at her, confused. I stood frozen, a cold sweat forming on my back. What was happening? I wanted to help her, but I felt helpless. Clara trembled as she spoke, and worry gnawed at me. Had I missed something important? The uneasy atmosphere hung in the air that day. After school, I walked through the hallways, which felt oddly darker, even though the sun was setting outside. It felt like the school was breathing, watching me as I moved. My footsteps echoed in the quiet. I glanced at the faded murals, but I couldn't shake the feeling of dread creeping up my spine. Suddenly, I heard something. A whisper. I spun around, heart pounding. Nothing. Just cold air. I felt clammy and unsure whether to stay or run out of there. I replayed Clara's shaky voice in my head over and over. I thought of everything that had happened and wondered if I was losing it. What if something evil lurked in that school, watching me too? That night, I lay in bed, wide awake. The feeling wouldn't leave me. Just as I thought about getting some sleep, my phone buzzed. An anonymous text appeared, "I hope you're ready." Cold terror washed over me. I was scared, even more than before. I couldn't shake the sense that something was waiting for me. The school felt alive, almost like a predator. I felt trapped, and the knowledge that I was still being watched filled me with dread. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was entering a nightmare I wouldn't wake up from. The next morning, I struggled to get out of bed. I felt like I was still wrapped in the dark fog of that text message. Each sound in the house seemed magnified. The crack of the floorboards, the hum of the fridge. I was nervous about going back to school. I knew I had to show up, but I felt like I was walking into a minefield. When I arrived, the morning sunlight barely pierced through the cloud cover. It gave the school a gloomy vibe, the promise of a storm hanging heavy in the air. I made my way to my classroom, keeping my head down. I caught a glimpse of a few students in the hallway, their faces blank and serious. No one seemed to be talking. As I stepped inside, I glanced at Clara's empty desk. The eerie silence unnerved me. I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were watching, the portraits of long-gone students glancing down upon me. I hesitated, almost wanting to bolt for the exit. Instead, I took a deep breath and prepared for the day. The morning dragged on. My mind was scattered, every flickering light and distant noise sent my heart racing. I had just started my lecture when the lights above me began to flicker in a familiar pattern. I felt a knot in my stomach. Were they really trying to communicate? Then, during lunch, I went to the teacher's lounge. I needed to talk to someone about what was happening. I found a couple of colleagues chatting quietly. As I approached, they stopped and turned to look at me. Their expressions changed. They looked worried. "Hey, did you hear about Clara?" one of them asked, their voice barely a whisper. Yes, she collapsed in my class yesterday. What happened? I replied, my chest tightening. She's been seeing things. Some say she's not the only one. There's something off about this school. A lot of odd things happen here. There it was again, the unease that had haunted my sleep. Odd things? I asked, my curiosity piqued though I didn't want to hear more. Stories of past teachers disappearing or getting sick, the other teacher said, her voice trembling. There's talk about spirits and something dark lurking in the hallways. Just keep your head down, okay? It was more than I could bear. I felt dizzy as I walked out of the lounge. Clutching my lunch tray, I took a moment to steady myself. The very walls of the school felt like they were closing in. I had to find out more. I returned to my classroom, my mind racing. Suddenly, I heard a crash from the back of the room. Startled, I dropped my tray. The sound echoed ominously. My heart slammed in my chest as I moved cautiously towards the source. That's when I saw it. A book had fallen from the shelf. It lay open on the floor, pages flapping slightly, as if someone had just been reading it. I didn't recognize it from my own collection. I bent down to pick it up, but my fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. I pulled back quickly, my heart racing anew. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was wrong. As I regained my composure, I steadied myself and opened the book to see what had caught my attention. And then I froze. My breath caught in my throat. There, on the page, was a photograph. A faded picture of what looked like my classroom, decades before. But that wasn't what sent a chill down my spine. It was the figure standing in the background, staring right at the camera. I realized with dread that the figure looked just like me. My thoughts raced. Was I really becoming a part of this school's dark history? What had I stumbled into? I felt as if the walls were closing in around me, each heartbeat drumming the urgency of a looming danger. But then, everything around me went dark. I blinked, but the darkness didn't fade. Panic surged through me as I reached out blindly, my hands grazing the cold, wooden desk. Where was everyone? Had the lights gone out? A breath later, a flicker illuminated the room, followed by a low hum. I squinted, and slowly, the outlines of my classroom came into focus. But something felt different. The air was thick, almost heavy with an unsettling tension. I heard whispers, soft but close, creeping around the edges of my mind. I couldn't decipher the words, but the tone felt urgent, desperate. Hello? I called out, my voice shaking. The whispers ceased, replaced by an eerie silence that made my skin crawl. My heart raced again. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Just as I was about to turn away, I caught sight of movement in the corner of the room. A shadow flitted past the window. I stepped closer, peering outside, but all I saw was swirling gray clouds. A chill ran down my spine. What if someone or something was watching me? The moment I returned to my desk, I spotted it again, the book I had just seen lying on the floor. It seemed inexplicably more open now, pages fluttering as if caught in a breeze. I approached it slowly, my instincts screaming at me to stop. But something compelled me forward. When I reached down to close the book, I noticed a hastily scribbled note tucked between the pages. It was written in a shaky hand, and as I read it, a wave of dread washed over me. Don't trust the walls. They see. They know. Panic surged through me again as I took a step back. I was shaking. What did that even mean? I wanted to flee, but the weight of curiosity and fear rooted me to the spot. Just then, the classroom door creaked open, and I jumped. It was Mr. Anderson, my colleague, looking pale and disheveled. "Did you hear that?" he asked breathlessly, glancing behind him as though expecting to see something slithering through the doorway. "I thought I heard Clara's voice in the hallway." I scrunched my brows, confused. Clara? What do you mean? She's sick. Before I could finish, the lights flickered into darkness once more. I grabbed Mr. Anderson's arm, my heart racing. What's happening? I don't know, he whispered urgently. But we need to leave. As we fumbled for the door, the whispers returned, louder and more frantic. They filled the air around us, echoing off the walls. I could barely think, barely breathe. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I hesitated. Something was wrong with this place, something that wanted us to stay. And then I heard it clear as day, a voice calling my name. Come, the darkness thickened around me, and I felt my grip on reality slipping. I had to understand what was happening, but the walls seemed to pulse with an unseen force, pulling me in. Just before the blackness swallowed me whole, I made a desperate vow. I would uncover the truth behind Clara's condition and the secrets lurking within these halls. Whatever I had to face it head-on. But the moment I turned, I found myself in a room I hadn't intended to enter, with walls adorned by photographs of former teachers, some familiar, all unsettling. One caught my eye, and my heart dropped. The face in the picture was unmistakable, it was mine. I stumbled back from the wall, my breath catching in my throat. How could this be? The eyes in the photograph bore into me, eerily similar to my own, yet the expression was twisted into something unrecognizable. It felt like I was staring into a reflection from a world that shouldn't exist. I'd never been in this room, never seen these faces before. Mr. Anderson? I called, panic rising again as I turned to find him. The room felt so oppressive, the air thickening around me. I couldn't shake the sensation that I was being watched, not just by the photographs but by something far more sinister. But he was gone. Mr. Anderson. I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. My heart pounded as I took a step toward the door I'd just come through, but it slammed shut with a force that rattled the walls. A chill coursed through me. I turned back to the photos. There had to be a way out. I hurried past more pictures of teachers, their smiles frozen in time. I felt my pulse quicken with each step. My eyes darted around the dimly lit room, searching for an exit. That's when I noticed the floor beneath my feet. It seemed to ripple like water, warping everything above it. I took a cautious step back, horrified. The whispers returned, swarming my mind like angry bees. I pressed my hands to my ears, trying to block them out. Stop. Just stop. But it only made the murmurs louder, more insistent. I struggled to focus, my thoughts muddled. For a fleeting moment, a clarity broke through, an image of Clara, pale and fragile, lying in a hospital bed. There had to be a connection. Clara. I yelled, the name tasting bitter on my tongue. What have you got to do with all of this? I could almost hear her name echoing back to me, taunting. Suddenly, a loud bang reverberated through the room. I spun around, heart racing. A figure emerged from the shadows behind one of the photographs, a ghostly silhouette that drifted closer. My breath caught in my throat. It had the same expression as the face in the picture. It was me. No. I stumbled back, a rush of fear flooding my veins. The doppelganger reached out, finger pointing directly at me, its voice a chilling whisper, you shouldn't have come here. The walls felt alive, closing in, pulsating with an angry energy. I turned and pounded on the door, but it wouldn't budge. My vision blurred, the room spinning. I had to get out, had to find Mr. Anderson, find Clara, find the truth. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm me, I caught sight of a small window high above the door. Light poured through it, illuminating a pathway in the darkness. I bolted toward it, desperation fueling my actions. I climbed onto a desk, stretching my arms up toward the window, but it was just out of reach. That's when I noticed the shadows behind me moving, twisting, morphing into shapes that whispered my name. I felt myself being pulled back, a tether I couldn't escape. I wouldn't let them take me. Leave me alone. I screamed, wrenching my body free. My hands found purchase on the windowsill, and I heaved myself upwards. Just as I felt the cold glass beneath my fingertips, the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar, echoing my fears back to me. With one final push, I broke free, tumbling through the window and falling into the blinding light. But then everything went dark again. I hit the ground hard, a jarring thud resonating through my body. I gasped for breath, struggling to comprehend where I was. The blinding light faded, replaced by a muted glow from overhead lights flickering to life. I rolled onto my back, trying to gather my thoughts. I was outside. I recognized the familiar layout of a schoolyard, yet it felt wrong. The air was thick with unease. Shadows loomed over the playground, and the familiar sounds of children were absent. I got to my feet, brushing dirt off my clothes, but something felt off. The world looked just slightly distorted, like a surreal dream. I moved cautiously toward the main building, my instinct screaming that something was very wrong. I peered through the glass doors at the empty halls. Desks were overturned, and lockers hung open, spilling their contents onto the floor. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed eerily in the silence. No answer. I stepped inside, glancing around. Everything felt hostile. I felt like I was trespassing in a place I'd once known well. The scent of aged paper and dust filled my nostrils. I could almost hear whispers in the distance, a chorus of silence. Memories of Clara flooded my mind again. I had to find her. Why was she connected to this? I muttered under my breath, desperation creeping in. I made my way down the hallway, past classroom doors that stood ajar. Each one felt like an invitation into chaos. I hesitated, then pushed open the first door. The classroom was empty, but the blackboard was scrawled with erratic notes, all detailing strange experiments on the nature of dreams and realities. I couldn't make sense of it. I scanned the room again, and that S when I saw it. A familiar red notebook lay on a desk, its pages flapping as if caught in a breeze. I recognized it instantly. Clara S. I rushed over, flipping through the pages, scanning her handwriting. They were filled with strange thoughts, nonsensical phrases, and repeated drawings of eyes watching from the darkness. "What were you getting into, Clara?" I whispered, feeling a connection deepening. Then, it hit me. A sudden dread washed over me as I realized the notes hinted at something far darker than I had anticipated. Clara's theories about alternate realities, about how the mind could open doors to other dimensions, suddenly seemed too real. My heart raced. "Clara!" I called, panic rising again. This wasn't just about me anymore. I needed to find her and put an end to whatever had occurred here. I turned to leave, but the door I entered slammed shut behind me with a loud bang. My pulse quickened. Just then, I heard it, the soft creaking of footsteps approaching from the hallway. I wasn't alone. I backed up against the blackboard, holding my breath. The footfalls grew louder, faster, but no other sound pierced the silence. Whatever was out there, it was getting close. Then I heard a voice, faint at first, then stronger. "You should have never come back." My blood ran cold. I was caught. Before I could react, the classroom door swung open, revealing nothing but the emptiness behind it. Outside, shadows danced and twisted under the flickering lights. I took a step forward, ready to bolt. But as I turned to escape, a figure stepped into view, a familiar face, twisted with an unsettling grin. It was me. "Your turn now," it said. The walls began to close in again, and I felt trapped once more. I had no idea what would happen next, but I knew I had to find a way out before it was too late. I froze, staring at my doppelganger. The air grew thick around us, pressing down like a weight on my chest. The alternate version of myself wore a grin that twisted my stomach. It was a mockery of everything I had been. My heart pounded, and thoughts raced through my mind. What do you mean by your turn? I demanded, trying to sound brave. The grin only widened. You should know. We are connected now. We share this space. Before I could comprehend what that meant, I bolted for the door, but it wasn't an exit anymore. The ground beneath my feet shifted, glowing symbols appeared on the walls, pulsating like a heartbeat. I felt panic chasing me down the hallway. I needed distance from whatever this was. As I turned a corner, I stumbled into another classroom. It was eerily familiar, desks still arranged in neat rows, but everything else was out of place. The walls were covered in drawings, intricate sketches of eyes, just like the ones Clara had made. Each eye seemed to follow me, a million unseen spectators watching my every move. I shivered. Clara? I whispered. My voice cracked in the tense silence. Then I heard laughter, a soft, menacing sound filtering through the air. It echoed from the other side of the room. In the corner, a dark figure crouched, shrouded in shadows. I squinted, trying to discern who it was, and then the figure turned. It was Clara, but not the Clara I remembered. Her eyes were wide and wild, 1,000 emotions flickering across her face. You shouldn't have come back here, she gasped, lunging forward. You don't understand what you've opened. Clara. I need to know what's happening. I shouted. My thoughts raced. How could she be here? The dimensions are colliding, she said, her voice shaky. Every time someone enters, they change, fragment. Your arrival twisted it all. She glanced behind me, and fear shadowed her features. You have to leave, now. But I hesitated. Leave? Where is there to go? Her expression grew frantic as the dark figure emerged from the shadows. It was me again, this time shifting and morphing, a reflection of my fears. You think you can escape? It taunted. You won't find your way out of the maze you've created. I grasped Clara's hand. What do we do? That notebook, she said, breathless. It's the key. Suddenly, the classroom walls shook, sending dust falling from the ceiling. I could hear whispers crescendoing into frantic shouts. We all belong here, they echoed. My vision blurred as the reality around us began to stretch and warp. Grab the notebook, and everything might change. Clara urged. I turned, racing back to the other room, but my feet felt heavy, like they were stuck in mud. When I reached the desk, I grabbed the notebook, my fingers trembling. Then everything went dark. Heart racing, I felt a pull, a force dragging me back. I was trapped, with shadows closing in. I clutched the notebook tight against my chest, desperate for answers, but the uncertainty only deepened. This wasn't just a fight for survival. I was caught in a web of realities. What awaited me next? I had no clue, but I needed to find out. I jolted awake, the weight of darkness lifting as a flicker of light appeared. I was sprawled on the cold floor of the classroom, the notebook still clutched in my arms. My heart thudded against my ribs, and I scanned my surroundings. The walls were back to normal, painted a bland beige, and the desks were empty. It felt too quiet. Clara? I called, my voice hoarse. There was no response, only the eerie echo of my own words. I rose to my feet and took a tentative step toward the door. My throat felt dry, and the taste of fear lingered. If this was a trick, I needed to stay sharp. As I reached the door, I noticed something strange. The handle was warm, almost hot to the touch. I hesitated, taking a breath before twisting it open. What lay beyond shocked me. The hallway was a warped, multicolored tunnel, much like a kaleidoscope gone mad. The walls bent and twisted, colors flashing in chaotic patterns. My heart raced. I was still in the school, but it was no longer my school. Just as I stepped through, a chilling whisper danced around me. You shouldn't have taken it. The voice echoed from somewhere deep within the hall. Cold washed over me. I recognized it, my doppelganger's taunt. Before I could gather my thoughts, a figure emerged from the swirling shadows. It was Clara again, but her form flickered, as if she were a glitch in the fabric of reality. You need to understand, she said, her voice wavering. You're not the only one trapped here. What do you mean? I asked, bewildered. There are others. The more the dimensions shift, the more we all lose ourselves. There's no escape. Her eyes darted behind me. Then what do I do? Find the original, she urged. The true source of the chaos. It's like a heart. Destroy it, and the dimensions will stabilize. I wanted to ask how to find this source, but the glimmer of light inside the hallway dimmed. Shadows thickened, swirling around us like a hungry beast. They are here, Clara muttered, her voice laced with panic. Move. I took off down the hallway, heart pounding. As I ran, I felt the shadows tug at me, fear clinging to my ankles, holding me back. I could hear whispers rising all around. Each word sent chills through my spine. Join us, they beckoned. Then I spotted a door half open at the end of the hall, radiating a flickering light. I dashed for it, desperation fueling my legs. As I reached the threshold, I glanced back. Clara stood still, her form wavering, and the figures from the shadows surrounded her. Clara! I shouted, but my voice stumbled against the swell of darkness that threatened to envelop her. Go! You have to go! She screamed. Without looking back, I flung myself through the door. I collided with a hard surface and rolled across the floor. The room was dim, littered with old papers and broken furniture. That's when I saw it, a huge, pulsating heart at the center of the room, surrounded by swirling shadows. It beat steadily, resonating with a deep, haunting sound. My breath quickened. Could this be the source Clara had mentioned? Before I could process what to do next, a chilling laugh echoed around me. Thought you could hide? My doppelganger stepped into the light, eyes glowing like molten gold. Welcome back. I took a step back, fear clawing at me. What do you want? The laughter deepened. Everything you are. The heart pulsed again, and I knew I had to act quickly. But how? I clenched the notebook tight, feeling a surge of determination. This was it. I had to confront my fears head-on. With newfound resolve, I stepped forward, prepared to fight for my reality. But as my hand reached toward the heartbeat, shadows lunged at me. The next few moments could change everything. The shadows struck like a wave, cold and relentless. I barely had time to react. They wrapped around my legs, pulling me down as the laugh of my doppelganger echoed through the room. Panic surged through me. I was trapped, engulfed by darkness and fear. Let go! I shouted, thrashing against the ink-black tendrils. They tightened, but I refused to yield. Then I remembered the notebook. I fumbled for it, ripping it from my side and opening it to the first page. The ink felt familiar and comforting under my fingers. It had to hold something, an answer, a clue. But as I scanned the scrawled pages, they blurred and shifted, the words rearranging themselves before my eyes. Panic clawed at me again. No, no! I cried. This wasn't the time for a trick. I needed to focus. Confused? My doppelganger sneered, stepping closer, her eyes glimmering with dark delight. You think scribbling on some pages will save you? Despite the mounting dread, a spark ignited in my mind. This notebook isn't just a journal, I murmured, realizing it held more than just my thoughts. With determination, I looked back at the pages, trying to recall Clara's words. The original, the heart. Suddenly, the shadows writhed, as if responding to my intent. I closed my eyes and felt the heart's pulse link with the rhythm of my own. An idea formed. I began to write, fast and furious, channeling every ounce of fear and frustration into the pages. Each word was an anchor, a tether to reality. "Stop!" my doppelganger screeched, her form flickering. The shadows seemed to recoil from the bright energy of my words, but she advanced, anger sparking in her gaze. "You'll regret that." But I couldn't stop. I wrote about the chaos, about the fear, about what had happened to Clara. I wrote about the heart, envisioning it as a target, a source of power I could disrupt. With each stroke of the pen, the atmosphere shifted. The heart's glow pulsated brighter, and the shadows faltered. I could feel them struggling against something deep within the pages. Then, like a tide, they surged backward, letting out angry hisses. Suddenly, the doppelganger lunged forward, determination etched on her face. "You think you can hide behind that?" In a split second, I dropped the notebook and reached for the heart. My hand brushed against its surface, warmth radiated against my skin, a fierce pulse thrumming through me. I closed my eyes and felt a wave of understanding wash over me. It wasn't just chaos, it was hope. The heart was the essence of everything, the dreams, fears, and realities intertwined. It needed to be embraced, not crushed. I drew back, determined to shift the energy instead of destroying it. Together, I whispered, focusing my energy toward the heart. "We can end this." Suddenly, a deafening screech filled the air, and everything went dark. It was as if someone had flipped a switch, extinguishing the light just as I felt the heart's power connect with mine. I could no longer sense the shadows or my doppelganger. I was suspended alone in an endless void, but I felt a presence, something powerful and ancient, surrounding me. And then I realized I had one chance to harness this energy. But would I be able to wield it, or would it consume me? I opened my eyes in the void, disoriented. The dark felt thick, wrapping around me like a thick blanket. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel the energy pulsating, the heart still connecting with me. A faint light flickered, pulling my attention, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed, swallowed by the emptiness. Out of the silence, whispers began to swirl around me, unintelligible yet laced with urgency. The shadows were still there, lurking at the edges of my consciousness. I remembered their cold touch, the way they had wrapped around my legs. I shivered. I couldn't let them take me again. Then, like a sudden breath, the darkness parted in front of me. I stumbled forward, heart racing. A shimmering figure appeared, its outline blurry but unmistakably human. My breath caught in my throat. "Clara? Help me," she whispered, her voice strained and desperate. "Clara." I reached out, but she drifted away, the shadows swirling to envelop her. My stomach twisted. I had to act. I focused on the heart, its warmth throbbing inside me. Words began forming in my mind, memories of moments we shared, laughter, lessons, hope. I concentrated, throwing those memories out into the darkness. "Clara, I'm here. I'm not giving up on you." The light from the heart pulsed more intensely as I summoned every ounce of strength. The shadows writhed and recoiled. I felt them dimming. For a moment, I could see Clara's face, her features illuminated by the heart's glow. That flicker of light was fading, and I couldn't let that happen. "Fight!" I shouted, channeling everything I had. The energy around me shifted, becoming a shield. I could feel Clara's essence pushing through the darkness along with mine. It created a barrier, fragile yet strong enough to push the shadows back. Suddenly, the darkness surged again. They lashed out, attempting to snatch Clara away. My stomach dropped. I couldn't let them take her. With an urgent push, I wrote in the air, forming letters and phrases that hovered like fireflies. "You are not alone. We can break this." The shadows screamed, their claws swiping at the words. But they were too bright, they carved into the darkness, pushing it back. "Clara, hold on," I urged, feeling the weight of the shadows pressing heavier against us. The light flickered like a candle in a storm. I reached for Clara's hand through the chaos, grasping at the edge. And then, she was there, her fingers brushing against mine. "No," she whispered, pain reflected in her eyes. "The heart is powerful, but it's dangerous." Together, I reiterated, feeling our connection deeper than ever before. "We can make it through. Trust me." For a heartbeat, we locked eyes, her expression shifting from fear to determination. That glimmer of hope pushed the shadows back again. Then, a sharp crack pierced through the air, and the ground beneath us trembled. "The heart is unstable." Clara screamed, and I felt it then, a rift opening beneath us, threatening to swallow us whole. "No!" I shouted, fighting against the current pulling us down. That's when I saw it, the shimmering light of the heart breaking apart, each fragment glowing with immense energy. It would take a leap of faith to harness that essence, but what if it was too late? "Clara!" I cried, the darkness swirled threateningly around us. "We have to try." But as I made my move, everything shifted, and I understood, if the heart shattered, so would we. The question lingered, heavy in the air: could I save us both, or would this be our final chapter? In an instant, the air crackled around us, charged with energy as I reached for the heart's pulsing fragments. I had to believe that together, Clara and I could harness this power and pull ourselves back from the brink. "Now!" I shouted, and we leaped toward the fragmented light. As we plunged into the radiant shards, warmth engulfed us, filling me with a sense of wholeness I hadn't felt in ages. It was as if every piece of fear, doubt, and pain was melting away. The shadows hissed angrily, recoiling from the bright light that surged around us. I could feel Clara's presence beside me, an anchor in the chaos. We embraced that brilliance, weaving in and out of the fragments, and I began to write again, not in the air, but in my mind. I conjured every moment of hope, every memory that mattered, everything I wanted to protect. The heart's energy swirled around us, capturing each thought like a new thread, spinning them into a shield against the encroaching darkness. "Keep pushing them back," I yelled, feeling Clara's resolve strengthen. With a final, collective gasp, we turned toward the swirling shadows, our words echoing defiantly. "You are not welcome here. You don't own us." The shadows shrank back, their menacing forms wavering as the warm light enveloped everything. The heart's vibrancy seemed to pulse in response, locking the dark forces away from us. Just as the shadows dissipated, I felt the ground shift beneath us. It became solid again, the swirling chaos anchoring into a quiet hum. The darkness faded, retreating into a void, leaving Clara and me standing amid the remnants of the heart. A brilliant light radiated from the floor, illuminating the room as we surveyed our surroundings. The space was transformed. The haphazard scribbles on the walls shimmered with a new clarity, a swirling mural of colors, a testament to our victory over the chaos. Clara stood to my side, still flickering but now with a strength I could feel. We were free, but at what cost? We turned to face one another, uncertainty painted on both our faces. "Is it over?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I replied, my throat heavy with lingering fear. "Maybe, but I don't think we'll simply walk away from this unchanged." The shadows might have retreated, but the knowledge of our experience weighed heavily upon us. I could feel it in my bones. The riddle of the school, my doppelganger, the whispers they would never truly leave me. Like a web that kept tugging gently at the edges of my thoughts, the questions lingered. What did we awaken? Were there still others trapped beyond the veil? Will we ever truly escape? Clara asked, as if reading my mind. "I don't know," I confessed. "But we have to keep trying." In that moment, I realized how connected we truly were, not just as two souls caught in a chaotic web but as allies woven together in hope, battling against residual fears yet to surface. As we walked together toward the door, the warmth of the heart still pulsed in the air, a reminder that light can pierce the darkness, yet shadows await every heart hesitant to shine. The hallway opened before us, the path ahead unfamiliar, filled with uncertainties and patches of gray. My heart raced, knowing that whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. But I also understood that some questions may never find answers, some shadows may forever linger, leaving me to wonder where the line blurred between reality and something else entirely. I stepped forward, hand in hand with Clara, moving toward the unknown, and for the first time, I felt ready to confront whatever awaited us.